So with that, the beautiful pictures and the contributions also from River and Claire Dubois' beautiful and really insightful forward that she has written. Mary is the founder of Live Your Wild Soul Story, and she's an award-winning writer, internationally recognized speaker and facilitator of journal and poetry therapy, which has been beautifully delivered through the Tariki Trust in the last few years, as well as in her own work. She's a pioneer in the spiritual ecology movement and is the author of Reclaiming the Wild Soul, which was her previous publication. She lives in Marin County, California. So we have an hour together. There's a lot to fit into that. It's going to be a really beautiful and rich hour. So without further ado, I'm actually going to hand over to Mary to chat and reminisce, as she said, for a few minutes with Claire Dubois, as a way to really ground us and center us into this beautiful container that this book has come out of. And just before we do that, I invite us to just take a breath as I light this candle. So I light this candle as it burns for all of the Tree Sisters and all of the sisterhood that encourages one another to create, to inspire one another, to support one another, and to see one another's beauty and wildness and boldness when sometimes we don't see it ourselves shining. So this will be lit for the whole hour, and may it be something that you can maybe focus on, knowing that we are all here on this planet together and filtered together into this little Zoom space, and that candle is burning for us all. And also for you, Mary, as we give this book a birthing into this community. So you're so welcome, and I hand over to you.
Harriet, thank you so much, and thank you for lighting that candle. That is so beautiful. I leave you to admitting people now. Darling Claire, hello.
Just before we start, just to request everybody, it's so gorgeous to see your faces, that you put yourselves on mute. I'm seeing a lot of people that aren't on mute. So it'd be really great if everybody could mute themselves. And I apologize, I have only got 10 minutes. So I'm a brief show before dashing off to an appointment. So forgive my timing for that. But it's so exciting to be here with you, Mary.
It's so lovely to be with you, Claire. And you know, one of the reasons, number one, Claire and I, over the last 9 years, have become really good friends. But we met in 2015 when I proposed to Tree Sisters that I would like to do a course based on the 5 Earth archetypes that I had written about in Reclaiming the Wild Soul. And Claire, who had blurbed that book, was incredibly open to this concept. So Claire, do you remember that, our first initial conversations about that possibility?
I don't remember the actual conversations, but I do remember how immediately it felt like a perfect match. And that was before I really even understood what archetypes were. I mean, you educated me so much around the power of archetypes. And then, you know, the journey that we went on, it was life-changing. It was life-changing for me. It was life-changing for multiple members of the team. I mean, it was so powerful. It was like, yeah, it was extraordinary. I mean, you were just such a blessing that appeared. And we got to do that amazing job of working together.
Yeah, it was really, we had this incredible creative collaboration. And we were so simpatico because both of us, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, felt so deeply that we had to put action into the world, to plant trees, to defend against deforestation, to bring out the horrors of climate change. but we also needed this deep internal shift of consciousness, right? That it wouldn't happen, that it couldn't happen unless we actually attended to our interior ecology as well. I mean, would you say that that was true, Claire, that sense?
I would say that, I mean, Tree Sisters was a lot about the trees, but for me, it was primarily about the women.
Right.
It was always primarily about how do you turn the key inside us that causes us to naturally want to protect our world, rather than having to try to convince anybody to do that. We need to
And
be
somebody needs to mute themselves.
So, you know, my primary inquiry has always been, what are the interventions that can break down the defenses that exist in our state of separation so that we naturally move back into
Right.
our original state of connection? And being your work, it was just like this light bulb went on. It's like, oh my God, she's creating, or she's highlighting or opening or gifting us with this way of moving back into a natural default setting of belonging. And it was that was the genius of it, because it's just true. It's true. And you're giving people a pathway in through the thing that we need the most, which is intimacy. Intimacy and belonging. So which resource is one? And it's the lack of resource and the exhaustion of our world that causes us to be separated in the first place, or is, you know, a massive, like, all of this is due to separation. So anything that can recreate that experience of intimacy, I was just like a bloodhound for. And your work did it in the most, gosh, just majestically natural way. It wove us back into the landscapes in a way that we belonged, in a way that they reflected us back to ourselves. They could teach us, we could lean into them. It's just, I think it's one of the most precious and beautiful and timely pieces of work I've ever seen, in terms of the most important interventions that we need as a species, which is to weave ourselves back into the natural world, if we've got any hope of creating a society that is healthy in relationship to nature. If we're not healthy in relationship to our own nature as part of nature, there's just no chance. So this is fundamentally, extraordinarily important, what you've brought forward.
Well, bless your heart. And it wouldn't have been brought forward in this way without my experience of working with Tree Sisters, and particularly with you. You know, one of the things that you are so powerful about and have a passion for is sistering, as this really active verb. I had never experienced sistering in the way that I did when I taught this class. And actually, I was thinking about it this morning and getting a little teary over it. I had never been held. I mean, I've taught all over the place, and I had never been held by my sisters in the way that I was held when I taught that class. And it opened me up to the magic of being supported by other women. And I remember after the first workshop I delivered for you, after it was over, I put down the phone. I just like, oh, well, that's it. I've done my bit. I put down the phone. And like the next minute, you're calling me back and you're going, no, it's not done. I'm like, well, my time is up. And you all circled me. I got back on and you circled me and you acknowledged me in a way that was so profound. It shifted the cells in my body. And I don't think I could have written The Way of the Wild Soul Woman without that experience, because I wouldn't have known, I wouldn't have believed totally or trusted in what it's like for women to hold and support each other. Does that make sense?
I miss it. And, you know, having left Tree Sisters, that was the hardest thing to walk away from,
Yeah.
was the active and act of being part of. Although, you know, my first book is going to be on sistering, and that's going to be,
Yeah.
you know, I'm starting to write that. So it's
Yeah.
going to come, like, because that to me is one of the single most important things that ever came out of Tree Sisters for me, was the culture of women completely being able to trust each other, to call each other forth into our fullness, but also to, you know, to be there for that process. It's like we need to hold each other, just like the forest floor.
Yeah.
And so it was just it was so joyful being part of that process of you just going, wow, you know, what if this actually was written or created for women? Like, I mean, the whole thing was just so intimate, and it was so beautiful because it was emergent, and we got to be in that emergent experience. It was like, you know, it unfolded for us, and then you were like gathering that wisdom, like allowing it to move through you and bringing it to the world. I mean, the whole process was so deeply feminine.
It really was. And my sweet friend, I am noticing that it is time for you to leave us, which I hate, but we have to let you go. And, you know, just thank you. Thank you for being, and not just for me, but for many hundreds and possibly thousands of women who had an experience through you, through Tree Sisters, and went on to do their work in the world. So, with deep blessings and deep love, on to your next thing, my friend. Love you.
So sorry. So beautiful to see all your faces, and thank you for being here, recognizing Mary's offering. If you haven't like fully stepped into this book or this process, like really make time to do it. It's so instructive, it's so inspiring, it's incredibly confronting. I mean, I think I was in the desert for 3 years, wasn't I?
A very long time.
It shows you to yourself and gifts you to yourself in the most deliciously intimate way. And I think one of the great difficulties for women, because of how we've been treated over millennia and what's in our epigenetics, is allowing for intimacy, is really allowing ourselves to feel, to be as porous as we are, to allow life in and to trust it. And I think that's why our relationship with each other is just so incredibly crucial, that we can build that safe space to give each other that gift. Anyway, love to you all. Mary, I celebrate you. I honor you. I'm so damn thrilled you've got this body of work out, and well done.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Claire.
Thank you so much, Claire, for coming on. And yes, may your day, your evening go beautifully. And now I turn to you, Mary, to maybe ask a couple of questions, and also just to say that maybe we can push a couple of minutes into the reading section, if that's okay, but not too much, so we can try and stick to time.
Yeah, we're going with the flow, right?
Yes,
everyone.
So I would love to ask you, after Reclaiming the Wild Soul, which you have mentioned a little bit about the inspiration for that, what moved you to write about these earth archetypes in the contexts that we see in the woman's journey, and especially in this book?
Well, it was teaching this course through Tree Sisters, and it was realizing that everybody on this planet needs to reignite and reimagine their relationship with the natural world. But as women, we have a particular relationship. We're so physically attuned to the ebb and flow. I mean, our wombs fill with ancient seas of amniotic fluid, you know, milk sprouts from our breasts. We bleed on this wonderful monthly lunar-like cycle. So, but what would it be like to look at our relationship with these archetypes of desert woman, forest woman, ocean and river woman, mountain woman, and grassland woman? What would it be like to embody these landscapes as women? Would that be different too? And I think it became really, really clear as we were moving through this journey together that women shared, wherever they were in the world, whatever age they were, this core wounding of feeling that there was more to them, that there was a wildness in them that had been overly domesticated, that there were words that wanted to tumble out that had been suppressed and silenced. So there was this sense, in a way, an almost eruptive need to lean into those landscapes, to begin to fully emerge as the incredible, wise, creative beings that we are with agency. And I wanted, because I'm a woman, to really look at how I'd been wounded by the patriarchy and how I knew other women had been wounded by the patriarchy. And what would it be like, instead of pushing into the patriarchy, to turn away from that constant battle with it and instead turn towards the great ancestral earth archetypes and say, I know you've got my back. What can I learn from you? And so it was just a powerful feminine experience. And I encourage men to read this book too. But this was written to the female experience.
And
there's
it's
open, yeah.
Yes, there's a very powerful passage in the book when you describe that moment when you go on stage and share that kind of alternate view of what a woman in leadership, or woman who is meeting their capacity and their potential. Very, very insightful. And the next question I appreciate is probably huge, so maybe go into it as much as we can. So the Earth archetypes, and maybe you can explain how they may be similar or different to the other archetypes, Jungian archetypes, perhaps, that other people may be familiar with. But also, I'm wondering about how the landscapes themselves lent themselves to the 5 archetypes that you associated with eventually, that became these 5 landscape archetypes.
Well, what I love about the earth archetypes is they're ancient. They were archetypes before patriarchy, before, the classical world, before Zeus and Athena and all of the classical archetypes, way before the Jungian archetypes of animus and anima, the good father, the good mother. So they aren't in any which way informed by a patriarchal lens. So archetypes are essentially these symbols that carry a pattern of energy. So if I say to you the warrior archetype, you understand warrior. We're going to fight our way through. We're going to take out our swords. We have this incredible kind of feisty energy. The victim archetype, right? We understand that one too. And we carry all of them. So you carry all of the earth archetypes as well. But if I say desert to you, a collection of characteristics will come into your being. And they might include dryness, or heat, or silence, or spaciousness, barrenness even. So it's the same with other archetypes. They are things that are not the things themselves, but represent something with a clustering of characteristics. But these are important, as I say, because they predate by millennia these other newer archetypes. So they're not tainted by the civilized world. And the other thing is to really remember is that we are simply the earth in human form. We emerged out of the earth. These literally are the body from which we moved into our humanness. I mean, it's just kind of mind-boggling to think about that, but they are literally our ancestors.
Wow, that's sending goosebumps up and down my back, Mary. And so succinctly put to us all, because it's a huge, huge subject. I'm wondering whether we can move on to some readings, and then perhaps if you would like to invite River Turner and Kathleen to share.
Yeah, I would really like to do that. So Lisa River Turner, will you wave at us? Yeah, she has, I tell her story in Ocean and River Woman, and she's going to read it. It's written in third person, but she's going to do this tangle of the brain and read it in first person. And Kathleen, many people will know you, but wave, if you will, wave to us. Kathleen did the illustrations for this book, which are incredible. In fact, I didn't tell you yet, Kathleen, but I was on a podcast and the woman just went on and on about your fabulous illustration. She was so excited and so thrilled by them because they add so much. And Kathleen is going to take us on a quick walk through. But first of all, I wanted to read just two pieces. And one from Desert, which is the first archetype representing the barren worlds, and one piece from the Grasslands, which is the final initiation, which represents that nurturing of what has been newly reborn in us. So here we go. This is Desert Woman, just to give you a flavor. Traditionally valued for our ability to connect with and care for others, we may ignore the call of Desert Woman for fear of losing others' approval. Or we may be terrified of looking inward toward our own needs and desires. Then life shakes us loose. Something happens. Death, loss, a burning passion, and we realize we barely know ourselves or what we want. We only sense that we are being urged to a wilder and more authentic existence. Will you answer the call of Desert Woman? Her fierce independence has earned her many epithets over the centuries: crazy, misfit, recluse, scorned as dust dry and undesirable by a culture that values women who are lush, fertile, and endlessly accommodating. She lives on the margins, but she revels in being free of others' expectations. Her blood beats true as a snare drum. Nothing stands between her and the glittering night sky, the earthy fragrance of creosote bushes after rain. Barrenness holds no fear for her, emptiness no terror. She is comfortable with non-doing, the void that precedes the conception, the blank page, the open territory. On her body, you will trace the first lines of your new story. So just to give you a sense of Desert Woman. So a very different archetype is Grassland Woman. And Sarah Steffi McQueen, will you wave at us, please? Because you are quoted in this one. I think Sarah. There, Sarah Steffi McQueen. Hoot, holla. Anyway, my friend, you are there. Sarah Steffi McQueen, this is from the Grassland Woman section. She represents, as I say, nurturing the newborn, and this is the way, reciprocity. Sarah Steffi McQueen, who trained with me as a Wild Soul Woman facilitator, wrote in a workshop, "As a wildflower meadow offers abundant variety, I see my gifts through the eyes of my participants as we gather in a circle. I see how I have touched others, how my offerings resonate with them. I look out at this beautiful meadow and feel my horizons expanding." For a Grassland Woman, giving is a feedback loop. As we offer our gifts, our community responds in kind. As we realize we are making a difference, we long to give more. This is a very different kind of relationship. We aren't giving out of obligation or for some quid pro quo. We are simply trusting that when we offer ourselves to life, life will support us in return. When we gift our spirits and bodies the same loving care, we begin to find sources of energy and joy that we have yet to imagine. When we feel the earth's love for us and ours for her, we begin to be more grateful for our own existence. As wild-souled women, we understand that we are not a body to be controlled, nipped, tucked, or shamed. We are part of the miracle of life, and as such, we deserve to be celebrated and praised. At every moment, we are engaged in a passionate love affair with the world in which we feel loved in return. This is true abundance, a fertility of spirit that bears the fruit of gladness. Early one morning, before guiding a group of women through the grassland woman's stage of their journey, I visited a favorite meadow. I was seeking to ground myself before the session. I took off my shoes and wriggled my toes deep into the dew-soaked grasses. I imagined roots extending from the soles of my feet into the earth, carrying my love and gratitude into the soil. My feet tingled, and I felt a shiver of electricity. I then did something I had never dared to do before. I allowed Earth to love me back. I felt her eros rising from the ground and flowing into me until my feet and my belly felt warm, and her energy surged through my body and every part of me shook with her loving presence. When I opened my eyes, a young buck stood about 6 feet away, his black nose quivering, a powerful energy vibrating between us. I was so aglow with radiance. I swear he would have mounted me if I hadn't started to move. In that moment, something shifted for me. I realized that for a grassland woman, it is as important to receive as it is to give, to welcome the pleasures of life, the sweet sensual joys of living in a world that also returns our affections in often deeply erotic ways. This is a radical shift for women who are much more comfortable with giving love than embracing it. Reciprocity means taking in all the gifts, all the joy, all the learning and wisdom and love until you understand at a core level that you are beloved simply because you are. Reciprocity is the fertile soil for a richly satisfying inner life. It allows you to contribute while remaining abundantly alive and energetic. It will help you to heal and become whole. And in that, my sisters, lies the salvation of the world. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So there are many, many stories that I tell of women who, for me, have awoken to certain archetypes or really embody them most particularly. And darling River Turner shared this. She had taken the course and she shared the Wild Soul Woman course, and she shared this writing with me. And of course, I needed to tell her story in the book because it is so beautiful. So now we have the great joy of hearing from her and listening to River's story.
So I'm going to attempt to read this in the first person, which probably is going to bend my brain a bit, if I'm honest. Yeah, so here we go. I stood in a circle, a sacred circle of women. As everyone introduced themselves, I surprised myself by saying, I want to be known as River. The name felt sacred and somehow appropriate for this phase of my life. Soon after, I learned that I had breast cancer, and water became my talisman. It reminded me that the flow of life is sometimes fast and chaotic and sometimes slow and gentle. Immersing myself in water helped to wash away the deep grief for the loss of my imagined future and for the physical and mental challenges that I was experiencing. The afternoon I was told that I might lose my breast, I attended a women's retreat and I shared my breast bucket list. Whatever was to come, I wanted to have lived wildly and freely, and I wanted to honour this part of my body that had nurtured 2 children and given such extraordinary pleasure. It was a cold winter's day, and in the presence of my circle sisters, we walked across ice and snow, and I knelt by a small stream. I placed my breasts and face in the water, and the water felt like 1,000 needles on my skin. Then it felt like fire. The women around me were singing, the river sang, and I allowed the voices of the women and the river to flow together and weave until I experienced complete surrender. But this wasn't giving up. This was a deep prayer that I would live. When I talk about this, my eyes shine like the river. And now 6 years, actually, after my lumpectomy and chemotherapy, swimming still keeps me very much connected to my wild and precious body. And I often swim with other women, and I love the pure, raucous, gut-spilling joy of splashing in icy rivers. Just being in the water, it keeps me sane, it keeps me present, it keeps me happy. Water keeps me alive.
You always make me cry when
I nearly made myself cry.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, oh, it is so beautiful. You are so beautiful. And I remember seeing those wonderful photographs on Facebook of you swimming in the water. But that moment when you put your breast in that river is just a kind of, I don't know, better than a baptism. It's just absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for that story, for being you. Yeah, really lovely. Yeah. So we are getting to see some of these glorious illustrations. Now, I put them on a PowerPoint, so you don't see all of them. So you're going to have to get the book because a little bit of them is cut off, and the intricacy of these images is quite extraordinary. And what's been happening is that people who get the book, and I'll show you before I put them all up there, Kathleen, just how they sit on a page, because it's so wonderful to see. You can see this is Desert Woman, for example. I mean, just, try and look away from her gaze. Women have actually really enjoyed coloring them in. And right now, Kathleen is working on a real treat for those who love to do some coloring. I won't say more about it now, but it'll be part of our Wild Soul Woman sisterhood that we are conjuring up, Kathleen and I, at the moment. So let me just share my screen, and then let me know that you can see this glorious image. Are you able to see it? Great. So Kathleen, dear friend, take it away. Unmute.
I was going to say now, oh goodness, now I'm staring at the illustrations. I couldn't take my eyes off all of you gathered here, and you are all the inspiration anyway for these glorious archetypes, which I got to know heart to heart with each of you in different ways and in different moments. And yes, River, you just made me cry. And and I cried back then, you know what I mean? Like it's not ever, it's like planting a seed. We all planted seeds. So I just wanted to mention, say that at first. I'm just so happy to be with all of you. For days now, I've been looking forward to this moment for Mary and for the book and, all of that. But to be honest, this sisterhood, it just kills me. And when Claire was speaking about that and the intimacy that we actually did attain together because of Claire's work, because of Mary's work, and because of each one of you and what you bring and the openness and the willingness and the beingness of your hearts and your love. So I could go on and on and on about that. But I guess I'm supposed to talk a little bit about the illustrations. Doing the illustrations was a gift for me. And
I'm going to actually stop sharing now because I want
Okay.
people to look at you now.
Oh, okay. I didn't know who we're all looking at, but I can feel you all. All right, so I'm going to try to hold it together and not cry right away. But my emotions are very, very, very high right now in a joyful way in this moment to be held by all of you and to know that, I have been going through some struggles as of late, and to know that the sisterhood that we talk about is a real thing, and it's been a real world that has been holding me continuously. And I can look at each one of you and have a full story of the moments that we connected and that I still feel held from. So I want you to know that to begin with. So I'm going back to the time when Mary asked me I started with Tree Sisters in 2016. So there was, kind of a bridge. And then I went over to California to be with Mary. And I experienced a beautiful retreat in Ben Lomond. And, I could go on about that for like 2 days too. And then I actually studied, as a facilitator with some of you and became facilitators of Wild Soul Women. Through that experience, I just kept, sketching because I could just see these a figurative woman coming out through the archetype of the landscape, which is, the opposite way that we're actually looking at it, but still it is the embodiment. And I just did it naturally. And I sent some of those to Mary because I was so grateful for just for her friendship, her sisterhood, or the experience of the story, the book, the training. And so it was a while later or whatever. And she says, I'm going to do the book and I want you to illustrate it. And we had a great time. And, doing that was an experiential. It was a gift at the moment because I separated from my husband. So desert was where I started. And I really embodied it. And it turned out that, as my life is usually kind of an imaginary fantasy of good and, ups and downs, not like a wonderful fantasy all the time, but it's a fantastical type of experience that I've always had in my life where I feel like there's a underground story to everything that's happening and an underground learning. And so as I started moving from one illustration to the next, I was experiencing that. So I would call and I would tell Mary this and that, I'd be like, oh, wow. Like right now, if you really want to see the drawing I have for desert, it's not, most people won't want to see it, but I just want to show you because it was so dark. There was this darkness that was coming through first, and there was these layers of different things. And I did show her to her and she says, wow, she says, I can feel that.
Can I say something there, Kathleen? Because once Desert Woman was created, it kind of set the template for the rest of these extraordinary illustrations, because we knew that there was something about the way she looked at us directly that had to be mirrored throughout, right?
that there was a way that each of these archetypes was offering us a challenge. And in fact, each of the archetypes, there's a challenge, which is the challenge that you really see in these amazing illustrations by Kathleen. And then there's a shift, like they're helping us to shift from this place to another place. And then there's the way, it's how do we really embody them? So for me, once I saw your desert woman, I knew that's what I wanted, because each of them sort of say to you, are you ready for me? Are you ready to open to me? Are you ready to awaken to me? And we can say yes, or we can say no, or we can say later, but the challenge is still there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I had to say yes. Just so that was the experiential piece. Is like, okay, and now I get, what Mary was saying, because it was such a beautiful collaboration. I would show her something, and then she would say, these certain things from where it was really coming from. And that's really what I wanted to depict. I wanted to get deeper and deeper and deeper into what was coming through Mary's words and her, the archetypes. And so that really meant, because I don't really do anything surface level, it really meant that I had to dive all the way in. And my life was also following that path. It was, a wild kind of time in my life. And, well, whose life isn't wild all the time? But anyway, I really and truly was learning, was expanding, was growing, was going into all the dark places, going into all the light places, experiencing the water, experiencing everything. And when Mary says bringing it all up to the level of the desert woman, that's a tricky kind of a thing to see until you experience,
Right.
actually, like, okay, let it just take me completely. And so anyway, it was an experience for me to do.
And it was an experience for us. I mean, it's really hard, as a creator to entrust something to somebody else, right? It's a huge thing. And so, the very few people that I would do that with, and Kathleen and I, we were sometimes in the trenches and sometimes, just in a feather down bed together. It was all good, but it was a really intimate, and evolved us both. I think it is time for questions. So I really want to invite anybody who would like to put a question into chat. And Harriet is going to kind of curate them. And feel free to ask River Turner, Kathleen, me, any questions you like, anything you're curious about, anything you'd like to know more about, any comments that you have. We would love to hear them. And we'll just give you a little minute to put something into chat.
So just before the chat was opened, Caroline Boyle wrote, "So beautiful and raw and wild, thank you." And that was particularly River, and I would like to share that because that wasn't shared into the group. Just while everybody's having a think, Mary, I have a question maybe that can set things going. And it's in the middle of Mountain Woman, and you describe the importance of retelling stories and unchaining the imagination. And I wonder if you could just describe a little bit about that, or expand on what you mean by unchaining the imagination.
Yeah, it seems to me, part of what keeps us stuck is that we don't allow ourselves to imagine what this world could be like, what the relationships could be like with each other, with Earth, with all of these things. And partly it's because our imaginations have been captured by stories that particularly keep women chained, literally chained. oftentimes, stuck in a tower, needing to flee to the forest, for fear of losing some part of themselves. So it's really an invitation to free our imaginations in order to create something different, to think outside of this box of patriarchy and capitalism and hierarchy and all the isms that keep us sort of spinning like hamsters in this wheel, and to think about what that is like to slowly unlock or quickly unlock and dream big, and to believe in those dreams, to hold that vision for each other and with each other.
Gosh. Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Evgenia, hello, Evgenia. If you have included any practices in the book, but do you have practices in the book that you have included that people can learn?
Thank you for asking that. Yes, almost 80. One of the things about writing a book that arises out of a class is that you actually think about it from the way of how do people transform. And it's one of the proudest things that I'm of this book, is that it really does offer a path, a map, a way, with journal prompts and rituals and meditations and all kinds of things that you can do. It's a book, quite honestly, that lends itself to coming together in a circle.
Talking about circle, there's been a request to help guide people to find out more about Tree Sisters, because that's not something that Shauna's heard of before. So we'll certainly give you all the links at the end, Shauna, and anybody else who's new to this. And Amanda's mentioned a couple of sessions she offered last week on Desert Woman that was really well received, and that the idea of a nascent community is something that she'll share. So thank you so much for that.
And Amanda, do you want to wave to everybody? Give us a wave. There you go. Another Wild Soul Woman facilitator. It's so lovely to see you here. Yeah.
So Kathleen, a question for you from Cindy. You mentioned going into dark places. What guidance can you offer for inhabiting those dark places again and not getting swallowed by that darkness?
Bring a light. And I think that that's true, the light that we are inside, and just kind of recognizing that it doesn't go out. It's always there. Sometimes you don't see it and you feel like it could be swallowed. That for me was, like I said, a very difficult time. And I use my art, actually. And so whatever is something that you really enjoy, whatever wakes your soul up, even if you're not an artist or a writer, I feel that, and I think Mary would agree, that just writing things down and just expressing yourself or drawing it out or coloring it out, those things really are much more important than most of us may know right now.
Yeah. I'd like to add something to that, because I think darkness has a very bad rap in our world. We all go through dark periods, and we're always told to kind of get out of it really quickly. But certainly what Forest Woman holds is the fecundity of darkness, that darkness, all life springs out of darkness. And sometimes it's in the darkest place that the seeds of that new life, that new yearning, that new desire get born. And if you try and rush by the darkness, not that you don't carry the light, Kathleen, because I totally agree with you, but it's like in being in the forest. If you just look through the light, you see just the smallest patch of everything. But if you stay in the darkness and let your whole being and eyes accustom yourself to the darkness, you'll begin to see how alive that place is. So it's an invitation to reinstate darkness as an incredibly valuable thing, both psychologically, literally, in many different ways.
I think we are probably drawing to the close of the timing of the questions, but just to let you know that there's a lot of really positive comments here about setting up circles, about buying the book. Too many things to really mention right now. I've put into the chat two websites that I invite you to look at. One is treesisters.org, and also Mary's personal website, MaryReynoldsThompson.com. And hopefully any queries or questions that have come up can be explored through those. Mary, I know that you've got an invitation for us and a quiz to share if you'd like to do that.
Yes. So first of all, if you go right to the beginning of chat, you'll see a link. Is it right at the beginning of chat? I can't actually see my chat right now.
I'll put it on here because some people won't have been in the room. And
yeah.
So I've just put it in again.
It's kind of a fun thing to do, which is a what wild soul woman archetype are you? It's a quiz. We are all of them, but in this particular moment, does one have a particular message for you? If you take the quiz, I will also have your email. You'll also receive some follow-up videos from me talking about the particular archetype that you came out as. But more than that, you'll be able to stay tuned to the launch of the Wild Soul Woman Sisterhood, and learn about anything that's maybe of interest to you. So that's that. But I would like, you can buy this beauty anywhere. I have to say, I kind of love her. She took a long time to birth, and it was only recently that I realized I had to go through the nursing of my mother through Alzheimer's, and a particularly traumatic and very hands-on process with a mother that we didn't hug normally, or, we weren't touchy-feely, but as she sort of deepened into Alzheimer's, that all changed. And it really brought out in me, I think, more. I've been mountain woman so much of my life. And I think it softened some of those edges for me and brought me to a place where I have this deep and powerful yearning for community and sisterhood. And that was the place that I could write this book from. But I would like to end by thanking dear Tariki Trust, dear River Turner, for, I think, making us all aware of Ocean and River Woman dripping down our cheeks, Kathleen, who is partner, collaborator, and friend, but also to have you do into chat just a line. A wild soul woman is. What is a wild soul woman? You don't really maybe know yet. Just take a leap of faith and put into chat what a wild soul woman is to you. And we can end there. And
Fully alive. I love this bit where I get to read all of these out loud. A wild soul woman is set free. A wild soul woman is alive, fully alive, bare, ready for life, courageous and free. Thank you so much. It has been a glorious celebration. You're so, so welcome. A woman in touch with her inner and outer landscapes. A wild soul woman seeks her truth, being one with the wilderness and standing for it. Yeah. True, brave and expansive, real, aware and alive, everything, truly and wholly herself, an embodiment of the deep feminine, freedom, connected, zeal and vitality, is being birthed every time we connect with nature and know her as ourselves. Thank you. Is rooted and connected. Who I was born to be, dancing her own dance, not hiding away from my own self. A beautiful, powerful, free, healing goddess. A woman, excuse me, that's my mother. A woman who sings her own song to the without apology, soulfully wild and true, a connected woman whole. A wild soul woman is a vision of the earth dreaming, embracing my own truth and reflecting it outwards, the voice of the voiceless, speaking the unspeakable truths, rooted to myself and Earth Mother. I hope I'm going to get through these in time. Forges a path with the ancient ancestors and her modern sisters through the damage of patriarchy into full health, wholeness and radiance. It's a spirit of nature. I am Heather. That's a beautiful, beautiful poem. I am the desert who changes but is still, who is silent under the stars, where yet life stirs, spins and swirls and comes into being. I am the desert who will be born through your every notion of separateness. A wild soul woman is who we are. Beautiful.
Thank you, everybody.
And let that
was
happen.
So beautiful. The very good news is that this, because it is being recorded, is going to be uploaded on the Tariki Trust YouTube channel. So please share it with your friends or anyone you think would be interested, or go back and review it again. Listen to that glorious poem you just co-created. And I thank you, each and every one of you, for being part of this celebration. And seeing so many familiar faces is a joy, and so many new faces is really wonderful.
Well, thank you, Mary, for bringing us together, and Kathleen and River for your amazing contributions and the radical weaving that you have all created into this book. Thanks again to everybody who's come. I've just put the link to Tariki Trust for anyone who's thinking about joining to do practitioner training, or even if you just want to learn a little bit more about how to journal in nature, or runes and ecotherapy, or anything at all, because we are quite an eclectic bunch of mentors and teachers. So
They are wonderful. Tariki Trust is really very special.
Thank you very much for saying that, and thank you very much for being one of our tutors. So both ways. So with that, I shall close the room, and thank you all again. Will
you blow out our candle?
Oh yes, and I'll be putting the YouTube video onto the Mary's Facebook as well as. So
Harriet, we all get to blow out the candle. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone.
Inspiration live in us.
Thank you so much.
So welcome. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. And we might stop the recording.
Just tried to find out how to do. Oh, there.
Bye.